Good afternoon. President Herring, Provost Furge, esteemed faculty, honored guests, graduates, supportive friends and family, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with you. I am truly honored and humbled. When I got this email a couple of months ago to address the commencement class, I started to think about all the things I wanted to say. And there are so many things I wanted to say. And so my creative process is something that I would highly recommend. It includes laying in bed and just closing your eyes. And so I'm laying in bed and I'm closing my eyes and I'm trying to think about what I want to say today. And I had some ideas, and then several weeks go by and I get an email and it's from Allison, and she says, hey, we need your speech like now because we have to approve it. And so I'm like, okay, so I go back to bed, and I'm laying in bed and I'm having these thoughts and these downloads, and I have this speech just come through and I'm like, this is great. This speech is great. So I send it to Allison, it gets approved, and then AJ invites me to the Tuesday night commencement dinner, like 3 nights ago, commencement dinner. And I'm there and I'm meeting all of you and I'm hearing President Herring's remarks, and I go home and I'm like, I can't use the speech that I wrote, because find yourself in your 20s and try things and go for it wasn't enough for this group. So I got home and I went back to bed. The great thing about a creative process that includes you sleeping is no one can tell you that you're lazy. I would highly recommend it. You've been sleeping for 15 hours, Brian, and I can say, no, I've been working for 15 hours. So I realize that we have people that have had 3rd and 4th careers. I realize that we've had people that have come back to school at a later age as an adult learner, and I just knew that find your passion and give yourself a shot in your 20s wasn't enough. President Herring said something really interesting at the Tuesday night dinner, and that kind of inspired a lot of what you're going to hear today. She said, congratulations, graduates. Go forward and do great things, and come back and share your teachings and your knowledge. And I thought to myself, this is a contradictory idea. Go forward and come back. Go out and come home. And I started thinking to myself, what does that mean for me? And it reminded me of probably the greatest highlight in my career. In 2020, I went down to Uruguay in South America, and I was supposed to be in Uruguay for 1 month. I went down there at the end of February, and I was supposed to return to New York City at the end of March. 1 week before my flight back to New York, the airport closed because of the global pandemic. And the airport remained closed for 1 year. So I remained stuck in Uruguay for 1 year. And like a lot of us, it was a really hard time. I was a business owner. I was very far from my family and friends. Business was hard. And it was a moment where it really tested me. But towards the end of that year, I sat in a cafe, and I'll never forget, it was the evening. And I had a cappuccino, which I don't really drink caffeine late at night usually. So I'm pretty jazzed, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, shaking and writing, and I'm sure I look like a crazy person. I had written something over the course of a couple of hours, and it was a love letter to the country of Uruguay after having spent like 8 months there. And I walked out onto the street, and the day had turned from light to dark. And I remember stepping onto the sidewalk, and I just started crying. Because I just knew that something in my soul had expressed a deep truth. And we've all been there, hopefully. We've all had a moment where we knew that something we did was true and meaningful. And so I published this letter, and 2 days later, it goes completely viral worldwide. And I'm getting thousands and thousands and thousands of messages from people all around the world. And it was a remarkable thing. And I read every single message. Every single message. And there were basically 2 messages that kept coming through, and you'll see why this is relevant to today's talk. The first theme that I saw was that when people loved where they lived, good things happened. And good things happen because when people love where they live, they invest their life force, their time, their energy, their talents, their experiences to making it better. That memory was jarred when President Herring said, go forward, do great things, and come back and share your talents. Because it was the same kind of contradictory logic, which is, I love where I live. You would think that means I'm just going to enjoy it, but it doesn't. It means I'm going to make it better. I'm going to invest myself into the place that I live. And this seeming contradiction that I saw from these thousands and thousands of messages and that I heard from President Herring Tuesday night seemed to really call into question the world that we live in today, which is it's either black or it's white. Like you just said, it's what happens when it's gray? It's either black and it's white, it's red or it's blue, it's right or it's wrong. The world is desperate to put us into these positions against each other and in a lot of ways against ourselves to come up with some absolute truth that almost never exists, right? And so when I heard President Herring's speech, I thought, okay, I need to work this in. So I've affectionately named this talk Somewhere in Between all of it. And so I've structured it in a way where I hope that it resonates with you, and I hope that it gives you permission to say, this is true, and this other thing that's absolutely contradictory to this thing that's true is also true. Because I feel like that is a beautiful place to live. So I've done 3 themes, and they're this juxtaposition, this contradiction of each other, but I hope that they'll make some sense to you. So thinking back, theme 1, thinking back to my letter in Uruguay, the other truth that came through for me, the other message that I got from 4,000 people was there's this quiet desperation. In some cases, it's not a quiet desperation. In some cases, it's a scream for our lives to matter, for our lives to have some meaning. We want, with all of our heart and soul, for our lives to mean something, to contribute, to impact, in whatever way that is. But what I also heard Tuesday night, which I'm so glad you invited me to that dinner, because this changed everything for me, was that there were these incredible speakers, and there were these incredible people, and every single time, anyone congratulated them on this accomplishment that is clearly an accomplishment, the very first thing everybody did was passed the credit to somebody else. So we want to have our lives have meaning, but how often do we really, and I mean really, like all in really, give ourselves credit for the things that we have done? So whether you're a graduate or whether you're a friend, a family, whoever you are in this audience, I'm inviting you to close your eyes for 20 seconds, and I want you to think about something that you've done in the last year or two. Like all in, give yourself credit for that thing that you did, that you are proud of, that you want to fully acknowledge yourself for. Just close your eyes for 20 seconds and don't make it about your wife or your husband or your spouse or your mentor or your kid. It's all about you. So let's do that for 20 seconds. All right, you can open your eyes. And I'm going to see if any of you have fallen asleep. I won't take it personal. So on one hand, it's celebrate yourself for real, unapologetically. And on the other hand, it's you cannot do this alone. You really can't do this alone. And so everyone that credited other people are right. I would say almost every single one of my professional and personal successes has come because somebody else was there, because someone else supported me. Now, what I want to say about relationships, we all have heard this. We need the help of good people. The thing that I've seen from my work around the world and from my own experience is that there is a big disconnect between relationships that work and that don't work. And the biggest disconnect that I see is the ones that work are the ones where people are equally as invested in the other person as they are asking them to be in themselves. There's a great quote that says there, it's a saying that says, if you want to know if you should go into business with somebody, like as your business partner, take a cross-country flight from New York to Los Angeles. If you don't want to sit by that person on that flight, you probably shouldn't go into business with them. So many people go into friendships and relationships because they think about what that person can do for them. It's a really bad losing strategy. If you are and it doesn't have to be 50-50 all the time, right? But if you are in a relationship because of what the person can do for you, you simply won't have the stamina to show up in ways that are healthy. And you can take inventory as well of your friends. Are they supporting you as well? So celebrate yourself, and you can't do it alone. The second theme that I want to talk today about is this idea that you all know very well, and that especially our first speaker was incredible at telling the story, reinvention. Reinvent rediscover, dream it, and then do it. There are so many times in our lives, and I'm sure we've all been there, where we are sitting in bed. Maybe you're not in bed, maybe you're walking your dog, maybe you're doing something, maybe you're watching The Notebook in the Broadway stadium or whatever, wherever you are, and there's that moment where you're like, I want more for myself and my family, but also just for myself. And I have this whisper, I call them angelic whispers, that won't stop screaming at me because it's this thing that I want to do. And I know I want to do. You know, right? You know when you want to do something. But it might be very different than what you've done. I think what I most admire about the people that I've gotten to know here in this class is that they didn't stop there. They said, I want more, and I'm going to go do it. So that's what I say. Reinvent it, redream it, dream it, and then go do it, right? And the second part, if that's one hand, and we're somewhere in between, the second part is be here now. Go outside, take your shoes and socks off, put your feet on the grass, look up at the sun, look up at the sky, look up at these turning autumn leaves. Close your eyes if you want to, and think about all the things and all the people and all the experiences and all the moments that are good and here and now. Because I am a big dreamer and I believe in dreaming, but if you don't take a disciplined approach to a present life, that spirals quickly. You are perpetually living in a hypothetical future that leads to anxiety and depression and compare and despair. And at the same time, if you are just stagnant, sedentary, here, complacent, you lose your edge and you just end up becoming blah. And there's nothing worse than a blah life. And you have all chosen to push forward and be here now. The last thing I'll say is the third theme, which I lived in New York City for many years of my adult life, and I always said, people would say, what's your favorite thing about New York City? And I would always say the same thing, that in any moment of any day, your life can completely change. I like to call this the power of one. The power of one conversation, the power of one person, one decision, one action, one experience, one moment, the power of one. Please don't underestimate the power of one for yourself, and please don't underestimate the power of one that you can give to somebody else. There's always this moment where I'm like, oh, this is a conversation that I really need to be an important one. And at the same time, we have the power of one on one hand. The next hand I have is, it's never just one. It's never one. I remember when I gave my first TED Talk, it was in Chicago, Illinois. It was early on in my entrepreneurial career. And I remember thinking, this is going to be the moment that's going to change my whole career. I'm going to give this TED Talk. I even purchased like 2 Google Voice numbers because I was like, I'm not going to be able to keep up with all the phone calls on my cell phone. I need to have several different lines ready so that when people are calling me, my business is going to explode. I gave the talk. It was in Chicago. I didn't sleep a minute the night before. I gave the talk. The next week, I'm waiting for the phone calls. I get a text from my mom, a text from my brother, and a couple of my friends were like, hey, dude, good job. And I'm like, what? And in that moment, I quickly discovered and decided that it was never just going to be one. It's every day. You want your kids to be proud of you every day. You can't give them a nice lunch and be like, I'm good. My kids love me. I did an awesome job as a mom. No, it's every day. Disciplined action, every day. Taking action, being brave, every day, every day, every day, all day. It's that disciplined approach to an accumulation of the things that make you you. I want to close with this thought. Since everyone's closing with quotes, I'm going to follow suit here. I remember when I was working for Mike Bloomberg, his administration, as he was the mayor of New York City, and I loved the job. It was a challenging job, and I was really into it, but it wasn't my truest truth. I knew I needed to do my own thing. I was an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur by blood, and it was good. It was good enough. And the first thing I want to say is be really, 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 really careful of good enough. It's actually the most dangerous. Because when things are really bad, you know you want something different. When things are good enough, meh, it's not so bad. It's not so bad is not enough. So it was good enough, but I wanted more. And so I remember watching this movie, and I think it was called We Bought a Zoo. I don't know if anyone's seen this, but it's this movie where Matt Damon and his family buy a zoo without knowing it's a zoo, and there are all these animals on it. It's a great movie. But there's this moment where they're about to open the zoo after doing like all kinds of work, and Matt Damon's sitting on the floor with his kids, and one of his kids says to him, like, "I'm scared, Daddy." And Matt Damon said something that has really driven my life. He says, "Don't worry, all it takes is 20 seconds of insane courage. All you need is 20 seconds of insane courage, and I promise you, everything works out." And I remember thinking that when I walked into my boss's office, and I was sweating and trembling, and I was like, "Oh, maybe this is a good paycheck," blah, blah, blah. And I said, 20 seconds of insane courage. I walked in, I said, "Thank you for the opportunity to work here. I've loved it. I'm resigning. This is my 2-week notice." 8 seconds, done. Best decision I ever made. So I ask you to think about those 20 seconds of courage, and what I wish for you is an infinite amount of 20 seconds of courage. You've already done it. When you submitted your application, that was 20 seconds of courage. When you said, "I accept," that was 2 seconds of courage. When you walked across this stage, to get your diploma, that's another 20 seconds of insane courage. So I wish you a lifetime more of insane courage, 20 seconds of insane courage. So whether you are moving forward and moving on, or you are coming back, whether you are here or whether you are there, or whether you are somewhere in between, welcome home. Congratulations, class of 2024. The road ahead is glorious, and may you be proud of how you spend your days. Thank you.